going to start off this week with some techie tech stuff. If you want to just watch the assembly on this, you can go to the chapters that are below me and find the chapter on assembly, and then we can start off there. But what I wanted to do is explain why this is kind of a cool system. Number one thing is the fact that it uses a hub assembly rather than a spindle. Now the spindle assembly in and of itself is not a bad thing, but the hub assembly actually makes this a lot better for precision. With a hub, this is all set. There is no lost motion in the bearings. There's no guesswork as to how the bearings are set up. It's all set from the factory, and they're like 180, 200,000 mile hub assemblies on these. So they'll go a long, long time. I may be a little off on the numbers. It may be a little less than that. Let's just say they're 100,000 miles. If you take your classic car and you drive it 100,000 miles, please let me know. I want to see the after effect of that. That makes this a really nice piece. Now the next thing I like about this system is the fact that they don't just use a stock spindle. A lot of the aftermarket kits that are out there do use a stock spindle. Not saying there's anything wrong with that, but what the guys at RRS did is they went in and they completely redesigned this and said, let's reimagine this from the ground up. So they made themselves a beautiful investment cast piece, much stronger than it needs to be possibly for US roads, but the Aussie roads, this is right where it needs to be. It's why they can offer a warranty with the system. The other thing about that is the tie rod bar that comes off of here is custom designed for compact and mid-sized Fords, meaning that anything that's a Falcon, Maverick, Fairlane, Torino. I am not going to go into the Mercury line as well because it takes 2 hours to say everything that Ford did between those makes, and I get really confused myself. Just know that if you have a Falcon-based Mercury or a Torino-based, Fairlane-based Comet or Montego, this all applies to what we're talking about. So, whenever Ford designed their Ackerman angles in this, and what Ackerman angle is the turning on a car. When the wheels turn, the inside wheel turns more. They designed the Ackerman setup for the Galaxies, and they stopped right there. They didn't go any further. They just did that one, and then everything else beyond that was using the Galaxy setup. That being the case, your turning is a little less dramatic with these cars than it is with the Galaxy. The Galaxy turns in really nice. These cars tend to push into a corner a little bit. Some of that has to do with the Ackerman angles. The guys at RRS fixed that with the tie rod setups on here. Tie rods also use a 1970 bigger bush here. The center post on that is the 1970, and it comes with the outer tie rod in. And they also have this strut assembly. This is really nice. Completely eliminating the upper control arm. That allows for shock tower notching kits. If I wanted to put a Coyote engine in this car, I could do it. The 5.0 Coyote will fit with a shock tower notching kit in a 1964 Falcon. If it'll fit in a Maverick, which they've done in Australia, it'll fit in a Falcon. The other nice thing about all this is it's fully adjustable for ride height. And how you do that is you pull these two bolts off on either side, and then you also pull the Allen screws out, and then it is adjustable with a wrench on these flats here to be able to go up and down. Note that if you're going to lower it a lot, you're going to possibly run into an issue of collision between the bottom of the strut and the nut that's underneath here. One of the other things that you can do too is you can also do finite adjustments on that with this part of it as well. In other words, you can take this, which is already on the bottom of its adjustment. It's as low as this car will go. You can take this and pick this up to do finite adjustments with the ride height. In other words, if you're just a little bit off on either side, you can adjust that right here. You don't want to do too much adjustment in here because if you do, the springs will possibly have a coil bind issue. Has a bumper inside so that you don't need the towers on the outside of this so that you can actually show this system off. Something that I would probably do that I'm planning on doing with this system, since we're going to be doing a good bit of road use with it, is I'm going to get a sleeve that you can get or a cover to go on the outside of the strut to protect things like my bearings and stuff in here. These bearings will, you don't want to get any grit in there, so I'm going to put a sleeve on here to protect that. Another thing I like about this system is the fact that you can use a stock sway bar with it. If you've got the stock V8 sway bar on your car, simply go in and put a set of urethane bushings on the inner piece and on the outer bushings, and it will actually handle very, very well without having a big sway bar on it. Some guys have complained about some rubbing between the sway bars and the backside of the strut, and I think that's due to the fact that the sway bars are actually just wider. I think what they're doing is they're probably making a sway bar in the aftermarket that is for a lot of different applications, and you're not getting a stock Falcon width sway bar or stock Fairlane width sway bar, whatever that would be, and it's just a little bit wider, so there may be some collision issues there. Putting a stock sway bar back on here, you can add the bigger sway bar. It will work, and you may not even have any issues with that if you get the right sway bar, but know that you could actually run this thing with a stock sway bar. Another thing on the actual tower itself, you can go in and replace the struts. The struts are available over the counter here in the United States. It's a 4-way adjustable strut. It's kind of like a refrigerator shelf usually, though. I find most of the times if I set it on a 3, I never go back to a 2 or a 4. It's going to just sit there. It's like you buy the refrigerator with the adjustable shelves, and it's really cool that they're adjustable. but realistically, how often do you adjust the shelves, right? Okay. All right, I'm going to talk a little bit about tie rod setups and what effect that has on everything. You can run a stock steering system on the RRS strut and brake kit. What I will say is if you have a 64 Falcon, you should probably dump the original early Falcon V8 inner and outer tie rod in setup. And if you have a 6-cylinder, you should go to a V8 tie rod assembly for it, because it's just a lot beefier. Even if you're going to go in and just leave the 6 in there, it's just better to do. You can run the 65 stuff. All that's available in the aftermarket. Now, we've done a video on putting all that stuff in here over at Manic Mechanic. If you want to go check that out, they'll outline the stock steering system for these cars. But suffice it to say that we are going to go in and put an RRS rack and pinion in here in order to see how that works. But initially, what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace, in a minute, we'll replace this outer tie rod end with the 70 outer tie rod end, which will work and allow us to have a steering system that's a stock style system, so we can just basically see the difference that the strut makes when we go out and start doing our live action test. All right, billet lower control arm. Do you need it? No, you do not. But my gosh, that thing is sexy. It is a beautiful piece. Anybody rolling up underneath here to look at the suspension on your car is going to see that and they're going to like it. Do you need it? No, you can run a stock lower control arm and it will work wonderfully. It'll do the job very, very well. Strut rods. If you run your stock strut rods, and you can, you should replace the bushings immediately, no matter what they're like. Go ahead and replace them with some brand new rubber bushings. Do not, repeat, not use urethane on the stock strut rods. The stock strut rods on the early cars especially are very spindly at the very end. The actual nut assembly is not very big in the shaft assembly. So you want to replace those with rubber so that you don't damage anything. The bad thing about it is pre-1966 you have absolutely no caster adjustment. Whatever the caster is set to from the factory is what you're going to get. Now the RRS strut probably has some amount of caster into it. It looks like it does have some, but you will probably not be able to get out to the 4 or maybe 5 if you want it degrees of caster that you can if you use their aftermarket spherical bushing or their urethane bushing setup like we have on our 65 Ranchero over there. So I'm going to bump out of here and we're going to let Deanna go ahead and put the rest of this thing together, and we are going to do some light adjustments for alignment. So here we go.
All right, so we're going to start with taking off the tie rod adjuster sleeve and the tie rod end.
Now the reason we're doing this is because I want to start both the inner tie rod end and the outer tie rod end at the same time on the sleeve. She's a very noisy person.
Just curious.
There's a little dirt on that too.
Just a little.
What is underneath the car? I'm not sure those have ever been off, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I don't know if we're making any headway.
Don't tell me I gotta go get Big Bertha.
You may.
Is it to where it'll spin though? Well, try doing the back one. Do the back one next. Let's see if it'll spin off.
All right. That looks pretty iffy.
There it goes. There it goes.
If you say so.
It's going to be tough because you got dirt in there. I'm going to rub some dirt on it.
That's what we're doing. Righties
One of them is a
normally-
right hand, one of it
Yeah.
is left hand thread.
It's not righty-tighty here.
No, it's righty loosey, lefty tighty.
You just want it all
It's
the
like
way.
Mopar lug nuts. On one side of the car they were right, and one side of the car they were left. You just take it all the way off there. And we'll take the other one and just undo it off camera. There you go.
Ta-da!
Ta-da! Huzzah!
All right, so this is our old tie rod adjuster sleeve, which was damaged. We did not realize that, so we went ahead and used the RRS tie rod adjuster sleeves. These are available over the counter, or you can just get them with your kit if you'd like.
Basically, when she says over the counter, what she means is you can replace just a sleeve assembly. The thing I am a little less happy about with these is that it is just a sheet metal sleeve, and your clamping force on it is here and here. With the RRS one, it still has the same functions, but the tie rod adjuster sleeve is marked. This end is the end that goes toward the inner tie rod end. Usually this end is the outer tie rod end. And even the nuts that they provide for tensioning are also tick marked for position on these where they go, because one is a right hand thread, one is a left hand thread. Nice thick metal all the way through. The nuts are making that a lot easier to work with. When you're doing your adjustments, a lot of times you've seen us use the screwdriver on there. With these, you can actually just put a 1-inch wrench on here to get your adjustments and be able to make really nice, easy, finite adjustments on it. So I really didn't want to put these on now because we were going to do these with the rack and pinion. But since we got some damage, might as well go all the way into the house if we're in the neighborhood. Always a good idea to grease either the bottom of the spindle or the top of the boot. I find a lot of times if you do that, it'll keep the boots in nicer condition. So we did it on the other one. This is what I want you to do on all of them if you're doing it.
All right.
Just makes it a little bit better for you in the long haul.
All right, we're going to be putting the rotor on now. I am using gloves to keep the surface rust a little bit lower than it already is. Somebody was handling it before, but that should be knocked off as soon as everything gets going. All right, Jeff's going to come put on the tire.
I gotta bring in the old man for the heavy lifting. I'm not sure why Logan's not doing this stuff. I love these wheels. I don't like these wheels because they use this style of lug nut, so it's kind of a pain to get them to start. These wheels are also an old set of Halibrands that I have had for years, and they tend to not want to, as I like to say, play nicely with others sometimes. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop the front end down a little bit and see if we can get it to pull in the way I want it to. Because right now, that's nice and tight. And I'm going to show you how to set up the alignment on it. Well, at least the camber.
All right, before we put the caliper back on, we're going to adjust the camber setting. Currently, it is at negative 1.6. So we want to get it to negative 0.5 to negative 0.75 in there. This is a 5/8 adjustment. All right, let's see where we're at now. Still at negative 1.6.
Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the tire and muck it around a little bit because it's going to change the position. And you can check that again. You're going to want to do this in increments as well.
Still around negative 1.4.
So, okay. So I'll do probably 6 or so turns.
All right. All right, let's see where we're at. Negative 1.0.
Getting there. You're almost there. Probably, let's do 3 turns. Let me do this before you put that on there.
Go for it. Negative 0.6.
I would not mess with it. Because you're right in between
Yeah.
negative 0.5 and negative 0.75, so I would leave it right there. Now what you would want to do normally, all right, go ahead and point at the 2 bolts that are going through the strut.
Right here?
At this point, you'll want to go in and tighten those 2 bolts up to torque specs in the instructions. You may have to go back in and do this again because we're only doing it on one side of the car, and having both sides at the normal ride height where we're at right now will make a difference on this. And we're going to go to the front in just a second here. I'm going to show you the difference in ride height we've got with this car with the strut in here. All right, so we have already picked up about 1 inch of drop on this. We're like at 7/8. So it's already dropped to 7/8 of an inch, and that's not with any of the sheet metal on the car. That is going to make a difference in the drop level of a vehicle. As soon as we start putting all the metal back on the front of this thing, it's going to drop even lower. So at that point only will I go in and start going and doing my ride height adjustments for final. I like how low it sits right now. I'm not so sure we can live with how low it sits right now. All right, so what we have now is you will look at this and you'll notice that this tire over here is gaining a ton of negative camber, and this tire is flat when it's up in the air. Now, it's not going to ever be this high. If you're in this kind of situation, you may be headed for the ditch. But the nice thing about it is when this tire is sitting normal and flat, this is the end of the travel, and all through the line of travel, the tire stays relatively flat. Now let's imagine we're going down the road and we're taking a corner and we're going into the corner and we're leaning. You don't want on your lean the outside tire to be doing this, because then you're riding on the inside edge of the tire only. You're only seeing a very narrow contact patch with your tire. On this one, you're seeing a full contact patch pretty much. Probably, let's just say 3/4 of the tire is in contact with the road. You're not getting any camber changes that are ugly. And you're probably also not inducing a ton of bump steer because your tie rod ends and all are staying relatively the same. All right, Deanna, come in here. Can you see the difference in this?
I do, yes.
So this is the Mac Daddy on it. This is what makes the RRS suspension a seller to me. Is you lose all the problems because he went in and did a tremendous amount of work with checking Ackerman angles, roll center, all the stuff that you want for this, and took the best of all possible solutions and came up with the McPherson strut.
Right, so you can actually go to the website, rrs-usa.com, and check out the technical tab. It should be on a link below, and it'll give you all the specs that he's talking about here, plus more.
And there'll also be a direct link in the description unless I or Andrew forget to put that in the description. I'm going to take a lint-free cloth, spray some brake clean on it, and I'm going to clean the rotor. And I'm wearing gloves for this activity because I don't want to foul the rotor with oils, because if you do, you can actually end up damaging the, well, it won't damage, but it's not good for the pads. Look at all the stuff I'm pulling off. Do the back side now. Now, I'm going to have Deanna come in here and put the caliper up in position. Got a little tip for you on how to do that. All right, now what I've done is I've gone and reversed a couple of wheel nuts here with some washers to keep the rotor sitting where it's supposed to be sitting. That way, we don't have to worry about this thing walking around while we're trying to put the caliper on. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my fingers in here with my gloves on, and I'm going to take this and set it on the bottom. And I'm going to try to roll it around. Now all I'm wanting to do is just hold position with that so that we can get it right up there. The only reason I'm doing that is to keep the pads from walking out on the caliper. Bye. We got another one.
My
You're
glove
gonna
got stuck in there.
You need to go get that other one. Hold it if you want to go get that one. Get that first one started.
Hopefully we're in there.
We're in there. I mean, I guess we're in there. You're the one looking at it. Now this is the Phase 2 brake kit from RRS. This is a 12-inch rotor with a dual piston PBR caliper on it. This is a nice production unit, been used by a lot of companies for performance applications. So this is a good dual piston caliper for most things you're going to do. The Phase 3 would be a 13-inch rotor with this same caliper on it. Phase 1 is a single piston caliper with an 11-inch rotor. Good for most street performance applications. Anything above Phase 3 is going to be Phase 4 and on. And we moved to proprietary calipers from the guys at RRS.
Tightening these up with an 18 millimeter.
Now this is one of the bolt sets on here that are actually not standard bolts. These are metrics. So you're going to need to have an 18 in order to do this. And that's mostly because the caliper sets on here are set up for that. Yeah, you don't need to go too hard. I'm going to pull these back off because I'm going to be painting the calipers and everything on this down the road. Are you stuck? Take it and knock it backwards. Inappropriate use of a tool.
There we go.
All right, now the next thing I'm going to talk about is brakes and stuff. And again, we're not going to actually install and bleed brakes and all today because we're going to be changing out brake lines and adding a dual reservoir master cylinder, which I'll be talking to you about in just a second.
All right, so brake lines are included. We're going to go ahead and install them. If you'll notice, they're blue. It matches. It's pretty. And notice the washer placement, one on either side here. It goes in right here. We're going to tighten it up with a 7/16. You're going to want to make sure that your line is vertical. All right, so now we're going to mount the brake line. And this can slide through. Just note that there's a flat spot inside this that can slide onto here. You can slide this through to adjust for whatever you need, and there is it does come with a bracket, but you can use your original bracket if you want.
Right, so what you can do is like I'm going to take this and pull it where the line is not out so much. And now what you'll want to do is like on this particular one, I would probably, since we've got a lot of line here, I would use one of the supplied brackets and change my mounting position and shorten my lines up so that we mounted up in here. Now if you wanted to and if you had the ability on this for line length, you could actually use the stock line because these fittings will actually thread into the nut on here. So in other words, this would actually made up, and then if you could, you would go in through here and mount onto this, but it's going to be a lot of line hang, so I would probably just change positions. All right, so the last thing I'm going to talk about is what you're going to need to do for brakes now. You cannot use your single reservoir master cylinder on some of these early cars like the Falcon all the way up through 1966. And it's kind of an ish. But on those, if it has the single reservoir master cylinder like I'm showing you right now, you're not going to be able to go with that. You're going to need to go with a dual reservoir master cylinder like the one we've got here on the inner fender. This is a correct style master cylinder if you're going to use a standard setup. You will also then need to have a brake proportioning valve like this for the back brakes because you won't have any way to control that with the ways these are older cars are set up because they're all set up for everything to run off of one pot. In other words, if you lose the master cylinder, you lose all brakes in a classic car. I highly recommend doing a dual reservoir conversion regardless.
Even if you're on the single piston?
Even if you're on a single piston, even if you're only running drum brakes, the dual reservoir master cylinder will separate your system and give you the option of possibly being able to come to a hard stop if you need to. Okay. So the proportioning valve will be necessary in that. Nobody makes the residual valves that Ford used on a lot of their passenger cars later. You can use those from the disc brake Mustangs if you have a Mustang, but your weight biases and everything are different on all the different cars. So it's going to be a problem otherwise. And really that's about it. I mean, I know that's been a lot, but that kind of gives you an idea of how this thing is.
Yeah.
I like the system. I think it's really nice. I think this car will handle like it's on rails once we're done. I'm probably going to, off camera, just put a fender on this thing just to see where it sits on that side. But I've got to get clips in to do that because I just remembered when I said we would do that, that the clips on these, it uses a fine thread bolt, not a coarse thread bolt. So I can't put the fender back on because we had to cut all those off to do that. So. Okay, so we're going to close this bad boy out. Done. Well, not done, but I mean, we got it in. Every time I put one of these in, I am really impressed with what I see out of them. So, I mean, you know, now that you've put one in completely, what do you think? I mean, you think this is something that a person with even limited
Yes.
installation skills can do?
Yeah, absolutely. I had you there as a guide, but those watching the video also have you as a
I
guide.
have me
so-
as a guide as well. So everybody,
Yeah, so we're good. But yeah, I mean, as far as stuff goes, really honestly getting the calipers on with this, that was the most difficult part.
yeah,
I
the
thought.
calipers on these things, and it's just because I wish I could figure out something that would be an easy solution to keep those pads spread to where they're supposed to be, because they're supposed to pull in. So they get a little fiddly with that, and that's one of the reasons I'll try to start them on the bottom and just roll everything up into position, because it's easier to control them down here
Yeah.
than it is to try to set them in sideways.
This is kind of a brake thing, though, right? I mean, all calibers can be like
Yeah,
that.
it's not going to be, it's not anything to do with RRS. It's actually
Right.
just the way calipers are. That would be the same thing if you were doing those on a 2004 GTO.
Yeah,
So it's the
easy
same
bolt-in system that you know, even your wife can do.
Oh, wow. See, I didn't say that. Had I said that,
You'd be in
I'd
trouble.
get in so much mail.
Yeah.
She's a badass. She can do this kind of stuff, and she's just really enjoyed it, and I think that's really fun.
Yes.
We'll probably have her on some more, possibly in an Auto Restomod shirt, not an RRS shirt in the future. If you guys want to see her helping me working on the car some, we'd love to have her help us. So let me know in the comments below. Also, do me a favor and check out the Patreon account. At the $10 a month level, you get monthly meetings with me somewhere on one side of me or the other, maybe this side. Jackson's saying it's both sides, so maybe we'll have twin lists. I don't know. We have a list of people rolling up here. Those are the guys who put their money where their mouth is. If we've done anything to help you work on your car and save yourself some money and learn how to do something on your own, think about going out and supporting us on Patreon. What you're actually doing is you're not helping me, you're helping Andrew, and you're helping the kids that come in here on the weekends and shoot, and possibly the Air National Guard that's flying around over the top of our house today. I don't know why, but that's what they do. So now they're doing this on Saturdays. I used to do it during the week. Also subscribe to the channel. We are on our march to 100,000. I just killed the guy on audio. We're on our march to 100,000 viewers right now. We're at 94,000, I think, right there at it. So we're looking for that 100,000 mark so we can get that really cool JPEG from the guys at YouTube that will pretend to be our plaque on the wall. And I probably, even if we really get the plaque for a little while, I may just put a JPEG of the plaque up there just for fun. And I guess that's really it.
Yeah.
So do me a favor, be kind to each other, love each other, treat each other nice. You guys have a great week. We'll see you next time on
Auto Restomod.
Pull my finger.
Pull my finger.
Oh no, I'm not doing that.